Thank you. So I have two questions. One, this isn't my first physical experience. I've done this before. And my question is, when I was born back in 1966, there was a lot fewer people on the planet. Now there's 6.5 billion. Where are all these spirits or souls, if you will, coming from?
Heavenly closets everywhere. We talked earlier about your clumps on chairs, and we know it's hard from your physical perspective because you tend to assume that because you are individual where you can see yourselves, that there must be individual spirits, and so there is a clump of non-physical assigned to a clump of flesh, and it is really not that way at all. It is a stream of consciousness that projects itself endlessly into the multifaceted physical environment that is you. So it is even possible, we'll stretch your thoughts still further, that the inner being that you might identify as a clump that is sort of assigned to you can be expressing in more than one physical being even at the same time. That's what you call soulmates or twin flames. So non-physical consciousness is fluid and flexible. In the same way that here you are in your body and you can be an athlete, you can be an accountant, you can be a philosopher, you can be interested in gardening, you can be all of those things, even though you are seen as singular, you are multifaceted. And so in a similar way, analogies are never perfect. The non-physical energy stream from which you come is as multifaceted as its interest in having experience. Also, your Earth is not at its highest point of population. That fluctuates depending upon exposure and experience and desire and interest. There are a lot of variables about that.
Thank you. And my second question, on the path of financial abundance, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I know the steps. I've got my goals set. And yet I don't do the things that I know I'm supposed to be doing. I won't show up to a key meeting. I won't return someone's phone call. Or just in general procrastination, but it's more in the form of sabotaging my success.
Well, actually, you're doing more sabotaging now as you blame action than you actually are doing by... In other words, procrastination is not a sign that you need to have your wrists slapped and whip yourself into shape to perform more action. Often procrastination is just your emotional reading on energy as it is lined up and your awareness at some level of the futility of action that's not going to produce anything to take you toward your goal. Esther had the experience some years ago before their monster bus days when she was making many airline reservations in advance. And they had several cities that they were going to fly to, and Esther just could not bring herself to make the phone call. And Jerry was beginning to tease her about it, telling her that the longer she waits, the less availability of seats there would be. The longer she waits, the higher probability of paying more money for the seats there would be. And Esther would say, I know, I'll do it. But every time she would come to that point on her list, she just could not make herself do it. Something else would call her instead. And she would have said, I am procrastinating, and it is wrong of me to do so. But then one night she was lying in bed. Jerry had not said anything about it. She was gently thinking about what was coming up, thought about the upcoming flights, and all of a sudden she felt such interest in getting up and making that phone call. And so she called. She was calling the Continental desk where they have their gold cards were in place at the time. And she reached the most delightful person who was very helpful, who managed to not only book every flight that Esther wanted with ease, but there was an upgrade to first class available utilizing Esther's gold card in every single case. It was a sort of miraculous unfolding. She could hardly believe it. She was breathless. She kept saying to the woman, "Well, I've got one more if you're up for it." And the woman said, "Well, let's go for it. Let's see what's out there." And they went on and on and on. Esther booked half a year of flights, just stepped into this window where all of this, and that run of flights were flawless. There were not delays. There was nothing going wrong with them. In other words, it was a wonderful unfolding. Esther could remember times when she had pushed herself forward in an attitude of procrastination and had actually taken the steps and had spent a long time on the phone, not being able to find this or find that, working very hard. When you feel enthusiasm to do something, it means you've lined up the energy and you are being inspired to action from that point of alignment. But when you have to push yourself and you don't feel like doing it, don't push yourself, because your effort is not worth it. You can't buck your own current.
Is it because I'm coming from a negative energy and pushing myself, and I'm going to attract
maybe you could say
more
that.
Possible negative?
You could say that, but it is not exactly that. It is more that you haven't taken the time to line up the energy, and so you're trying to make action give you more production than action can really give you without having lined up the energy. When you line up the energy, the feeling of procrastination goes away.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to have a little sensation of that before you take the time to line up the energy. So just be easy about it, but never again criticize yourself for a feeling of procrastination. Instead of calling it procrastination, call it sensitivity to the degree of the alignment of my energy and wisdom in not trying to push forward and make action do something it's not possibly capable of doing. And don't try to explain it to the people who called the meeting. They won't get it.
Right. Thank you.
Yes. So, never mind all of that. Never mind how you got off track. Never mind that you're off and on track. In other words, you are where you are. And when we say we want you to make peace with where you are, what we really mean is, here you are and all of your power is right now in this poignant, powerful now. And right now, you can choose a thought that feels a little better or a thought that feels a little worse. It's like out there in your future are all of the things that you want, and on one end of the big long stick are the things you really want, and on the other end of the big long stick are things you really don't want, or the absence of what you do want. And in every moment, you're moving toward it. One or the other. You're moving toward things you want or things you don't want, and you can tell by the way you feel what you're moving toward. We want you to be aware of how you feel so you can tell what you're moving toward before it manifests. We call that pre-manifestational awareness. Of course, you can wait until it manifests. We call that post-manifestational awareness. Pre-manifestational awareness is ever so much easier because once something manifests, it gets your attention for quite a long time. There are those x-rays, there are those edicts about whether you'll live or not. There are those arguments, there are those battles. In other words, once something manifests, now you've got more stuff to deal with. But if you catch it in the early subtle stages before it manifests, it's ever so much more easy to direct it the way you want. 99.9999% of every creation is completed vibrationally before you see physical evidence of it. So do you know that you could be sick or without enough money or in a miserable relationship, and you could have been mucking through the contrast and launching all kinds of rockets of desires, and Source is agreeing with you about all the things you want and is calling you toward that. Life is literally summoning you toward it. And as you're moving along, even though it hasn't manifested, if you're feeling hopeful, you're right on track. If you're feeling even slightly hopeful, you're right on track. As you begin to feel a little optimistic, you're even more on track. And when you start believing, manifestation starts taking place. But 99% of the creation is completed before you begin to see any physical evidence. Do you know how often you are right along the way, almost on the brink of manifestation, when you stop and take score and freak out because you're still in Yuma? Even though it's just a short time before you would be in the full-blown manifestation of what you want. People will say to us, Abraham, It just came out of the blue. And we say, no, it didn't. It doesn't just come out of the blue. You've been activated in that vibration and keeping that vibration alive for quite a long time before it manifested. And there has been, whether you are consciously aware of it or not, emotional evidence within you that is letting you know what you're marching toward vibrationally. So, the concept that we want you to consider here today is that out there are all the things you want, and out there are the opposite of all the things you want. And so you today, right now, in every moment, in fact, have the option of choosing a thought that feels better. Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. We think those were wonderful words. But if you are in despair, or even in revenge, or even in frustration sometimes, or even in overwhelmment sometimes, or certainly in anger sometimes you cannot get a whiff of bliss. And when someone tells you that you should be blissful, when somebody's up here bright and fluffy and you're down here not so bright and fluffy, murder seems more appropriate, doesn't it? From where you are, you can just keep sort of forking more in the direction of what you're wanting. Have you noticed that when you drive somewhere, or when you fly somewhere, or when you hike somewhere, that you never take a straight beeline from where you are exactly to your destination? You're moving this way and this way and this way and up and down and over and around. In other words, you're moving in all kinds of logical directions in order to eventually get to where you're wanting to be. And that's the way your contrasting life is. You are multifaceted beings with a multiple of many different intentions and beliefs and vibrations going on inside of you. Some things are really active, some things are not so active, and you've got points of attraction on many different subjects coming to you all the time. You live in an environment where there are so many people around you, so there is a lot of stimulation that you're getting from your friends, from those people that you don't even know, from the television, from what you read. You're picking it up from the ethers, you're getting it from thought forms. In other words, you're getting stimulation from all different levels of your being. And for you to maintain a steady course, you must focus upon, first of all, your intent to feel good. And when you care about feeling good, you will guide yourself, even without being consciously aware in every moment, you will guide yourself more and more effectively to the thoughts that feel good. So here you stand, and for whatever reason, you're not feeling that good. So you reach for a thought that feels a little better. And it doesn't feel a lot better. It hasn't solved your problem. You didn't immediately get to where you wanted to be, but this thought felt a little better. You may not be aware that this thought felt a little better, so then you think another thought that feels a little worse. In other words, you can fork this way or you can fork this way. As you deliberately fork into what feels a little better, and you acknowledge that you do, now you can maybe fork into something that feels a little better still, and a little better still, and a little better still. And then something happens that was active in your vibration that you weren't even really aware was active in your vibration. And without even meaning to, you fork over here. But because you've been deliberately forking this way and this way and this way, now as you fork over here, you're more aware that you've just forked over there because your intention is to fork over there. So even though you wanted to fork over there, when you forked over there, you didn't feel very good about forking over there, but now you make a new choice and you fork over there. In other words, when you realize that you can just reach for the thought that feels a little bit better, that little bit better feeling thought you have access to, because the little bit better feeling thought is not vibrationally so far apart from the thought that you are thinking now. And eventually you'll get so good at being able to maintain your balance no matter what, that you will finally be free. You will be able to look out into the world, a world where there are terrorists blowing themselves up and others, a world where there are diseases that are taking people, even people that you love, a world where there are bombs being dropped on cities, where families are losing their livelihood and their lives and their heritages. You will reach the place that you can look out into a world with all of this diversity, and you will be able to maintain your balance because you will have shown yourself you can focus and feel, and focus and feel, and focus and feel. You can maintain the vibrational relationship between who you really are and who you are being in this moment. We have enjoyed this interaction immensely. We are eager to visit with you about anything that is important to you. There is no order of business here, in the sense that anything is off limits, but you will discover a very comfortable unfolding. We can feel the power of that which you are. We can feel the clarity of that which you are. And we can feel the alignment that has taken place within you as you've settled in to the comforting words of empowerment that we have offered you just now.